What's going on, hockey fans? Welcome in to Hockey 101, Episode 6. And this is the fun one. This is the one we've been waiting for. This is the one that all of our complaining, all of our moaning and whining about the changes in the game of hockey, all of this academic endeavor, all of this deep dive, all of the notes you've been taking, all the questions you've been asking, well, it's time to get them answered. It's time to sit down with our professor extraordinaire of all things Hockey 101 and figure out what we now believe comes next. After all the questions have been asked, after all the rulings have been made, where do we fall in the world of hockey? We know my right-hand man. We know my consigliere. We know Monfrere from Another Mayor, Lucas Jones, but we welcome back in the man tonight with the plan. It's Bob Turow. Bob, where are we at?
Well, let's just start off, guys, by saying this is going to be a fun one tonight because we get to speculate. We get to give our opinion. And then 3 years from now, we get to look back and say, did we get it all right? Or were we way off base? But based on everything we know, we can start putting the pieces of the puzzle together for all the other levels other than the CHL and the NCAA. And where does it all fall out? So you want to get to it?
Let's get to it. Let's start. I think you want to start in the USHL. Is that where we're starting? What are we doing?
The league that thinks they're the fourth major junior league?
Yeah, let's talk about those guys.
The league that I used to work in?
I think so.
Okay, fair enough. The league that's done a really good job since they went Tier 1. Let's start out with that. I mean, those owners, I said in the previous podcast, those original owners made big-time investments. They ended up getting the development program into their league, their NHL draft picks, higher than the Q every year, higher than the Dub most years, higher than the OHL most years. Obviously, they have the national team in there, which really helps them. But we're finding something out, guys. They're not the fourth major junior hockey league. And how do we know that? Lucas, markets. Remember that from the last pod?
I do remember that.
People are walking with their feet, guys.
They are.
I mean, I don't see anybody going from the CHL to the USHL, but I see people going from the USHL to the CHL.
Yeah.
And so it tells you right there that the players, especially in their draft year, are saying the CHL is a better league. And they're going to all three CHL leagues from the USHL. So I don't, can you guys argue that? I can't argue it.
No, I'd love to be a devil's advocate for you, but not with that argument. I mean, it's right now, it's where it stands. I mean, you read the tea leaves, and they're all pointing right now north across the border.
So we've talked about this. They're not getting Power and Fantilli and Celebrini. Those are Canadians that are staying in Canada, playing in playing in the CHL. And, those guys are going straight to the National Hockey League. But even the players underneath them, we are finding out that they're all going to the CHL. And why are they going to the CHL? Well, for a whole bunch of reasons. They can all go there right now because their eligibility in Division I hockey is not compromised anymore. So they want the highest level of competition. I think when you take a look at it, guys, yeah, the USHL has more draft picks than each individual league, but not the entire CHL. And everybody can see where it's going. So what's going to happen to the USHL over time? Here's what I believe. And we're going to show some numbers in a little bit here, but 486 incoming Division I freshmen last year. The guess is, and let's just call it 500 for mathematical purposes because it's late at night when we're taping this and I don't want to get tripped up on math. So let's just say 250 of them end up coming from the CHL. Well, the USHL is 190. they're going to get 190 commitments. They're the next league. No question about it. The problem is, without getting Power, Celebrini, Fantilli, and all the best players right underneath them, the quality of their commitments is going to go down. Stop me when you think I'm way off track here, guys. Just give it to me. Okay? So they're going to get what you would typically think to be your North American Hockey League commitment. The void's got to be filled. If all those players are going from the USHL to the CHL, well, the league under the USHL has got to be filling the USHL. Make sense?
Yeah, and Bob, question for you with this. I mean, in that world, let's say the NAHL Division One commit is what is playing in the USHL. That product is dragged down a bit in quality. Do you think that is solely a hockey operations issue where you're not getting those draft picks anymore and you're getting a little bit less quality hockey? Or does that bleed into attendance? Does that bleed into revenue resources for these teams? Do you think that the markets are hockey intelligent enough to stop coming, to stop watching? Do you think it affects it at all? Or do you think this is solely an ops issue where you want to recruit the best and have the best team if you're going to have one?
Are you asking me about the USHL or the North American League or both?
Both, honestly.
So I was going to cover it a little bit later, but let's touch on it right now. I think the USHL teams aren't drawing that many people right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Listen, there was a time when I interviewed for the USHL's commissioner's job, and one of the owners told me, I don't care about NHL bound players. All I care about are selling beer, 19 to 20-year-olds, and some fights.
Yeah.
That's what keeps the fans in the building. So maybe that will keep the fans in the building in some places. I mean, I never, when I came into the USHL, Omaha and Lincoln used to fill the place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go to their attendance page right now, I don't know how you get to a break even if those numbers are right. I don't know what their operations are like right now. I can tell you back in the day, they were outstanding. The people I dealt with there, the coaches and the owners. So, I don't know if it's going to affect attendance. I mean, can you run a weaker product and still draw people? Yeah, if you make it like it's entertainment, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, when we were in another league, we talked about their new Western division, and it wasn't about the hockey. It was about what are we doing before the game? What are we doing in between periods? What are we doing after the game? What kind of promotional stuff are you throwing up into the crowd to get people engaged? I mean, I think you can sell that.
Yeah.
Listen, the USHL is not going anywhere. Period. The North American League, let's touch on that one when we get into the North American League, because that could be a different story. But the USHL is going to be just fine, even if they lose a couple of teams, or 3 or 4. Listen, if they have to go back to being an Iowa, Nebraska league, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. And they're going to have lots of Division I commitments. And by the way, some of those Division I commitments will turn out to be late blooming NHL picks. They're just not going to have those first rounders anymore.
No.
I think the real question we have right now is, are there going to be USHL teams that leave the USHL and go to the OHL? It's one thing to have players leave. The biggest hockey insiders there are in the National Hockey League are reporting that there's USHL teams heading to the OHL.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's break it down, guys, who those teams are. I mean, the biggest rumors are around Muskegon and Youngstown. Now, you got to remember here, as we talk about these teams, they have to be in the OHL area. And the OHL area is not New England, New York all the way down to Florida, Wisconsin all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Everything west of that is the Western Hockey League. So there's 6 teams that fit into that area. The big rumors are around Muskegon and Youngstown. But then you have Madison, you have Chicago, you have Green Bay, and you have this little thing called the development program in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So let's break them down one by one. If you take a look at Muskegon, their attendance is 2,400 and change. Their capacity, now the arena has changed over time with the ownerships that have come in, but it's 3,000 or a little bit more than 3,000. I can tell you this, the geography for Muskegon to go to the OHL from a travel standpoint is way better. They'd be put into a division with Sarnia, with Windsor. I mean, it would London, Kitchener. I mean, those trips are short. So Muskegon geographically makes sense. Typically, you need a 3,400 person attendance in a game, paid attendance to get to a break even. But who knows? Maybe they could do it at 3,000. It all depends on the lease of the arena. If you've got a really good lease and your fixed costs are down, you could do it. And certainly you would have to optimize all of the sponsorship opportunities and in-game opportunities. I don't know what they have with suites there, if they have that. But, I mean, they're up against it from a cash flow standpoint if they want to turn a yearly profit. And then Youngstown. I mean, they have the building, and geographically it's way better than where they're at right now with the USHL. I mean, how many states do they have to cross to get to their competition? Lucas, you're the teacher. Tell me. Oh, that's right. Not geography, right?
No, famously not geography.
Not geography. I mean, but it's, yeah, there's a lake there that they have to get around. As the crow flies to London, it's probably a 45-minute drive, right? But they haven't built that bridge yet. They've got the arena, 5,700. Their attendance, if you believe what's on the USHL website, it's 1,040. I mean...
And that's the published number, too, right?
Well, remember, this is all opinion and speculation here, but I think where you're going with that is typically published numbers are not the actual numbers, and it's an arrow down. I don't know. Let's just take it for what it's worth. I mean, if you do the quick math, you were in math, right, Lucas? That was your thing?
Yep.
Let's do some quick math. Say you just got to get to 3,000 for a break even. So they're 2,000 short, okay? 2,000 times $20 a ticket times 33 nights. What do we have?
You're at 120, million.
So does that mean they can't do it? No, of course they do it. They can do it. They won the USHL championship. I know they invest in player development there. But can they sell it to a town of 60,000 people?
Yeah.
I don't know. They haven't been able to do it in the USHL. And what they've been selling to their public right now is you're in the best major junior league in North America.
Yeah.
We've got more NHL draft picks than anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean they can't rebrand. And they have the resources. I mean, all you have to do is hire the staff. I mean, you can't miss on any sponsorship opportunities, but if you only have 1,000 people in the building, it's a little tough to sell sponsorships. So you got to worry about tickets right away, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you believe the insiders, they're gone. Somebody sent me a photo the other day about Muskegon and their scoreboard with it saying, "Welcome to the OHL." Now, I don't know if it was photoshopped or what. And I don't know if they're going to go. And we'll talk about if they can go in a second. Madison. I was shocked when I saw their attendance. 1942, still way below for the 3,400. Their cap is 2,600, which is a real problem. I mean, you can't get to 3,400 seats sold every night if all you have is 2,600 of them.
Yeah.
Math, right, Lucas?
Yep.
I think they'd have to move to another arena. The travel, and there's arenas there. The travel is worse for them to get to the Ontario Hockey League because now you got to come around Lake Michigan, and now you got to make that jaunt as opposed to just going over into Iowa and Nebraska. I would doubt that they would do it. Chicago's an interesting one. I think they're at Fox Valley right now. Their average attendance is 1,208. I mean, their seating is under 2. They would have to probably move to the All-State arena. But I mean, junior hockey just typically does not work in big arenas. Like, do you need junior hockey in Chicago?
Nope.
I mean, but the Blackhawks, I understand, own it. And there's no shortage of money, and if they want it, they can have it, right? But and even at the All-State Arena, that's where the AHL team plays. So, like, I don't know where else you would go there. To me, they're just a better fit in the USHL. Green Bay, they've got a 10,000 seat arena. It's gorgeous. They're averaging 2,400, but the travel would be worse. But I'm told possibly them too. And then you have the U.S. national team.
Yep.
They're in an arena that used to be an OHL arena. When the Plymouth Whalers were there, they would draw anywhere from 2,200 a game to filling the place. They always had good teams. Geographically, this is a way better fit for them, but like they're the national team, and we're going to get specifically into the national team a little bit later on. But go back to what we said earlier about what does the OHL want. Well, one of the things they wanted that we talked about in Pod 2 was monetization and expansion, and especially into the States, where it would help them secure more American 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, here's the next obstacle, guys. I'm told it's $16 million to get in to the Ontario Hockey League. Well, if your yearly cash flow isn't at break even and you're losing money, I don't know, $16 million seems like a lot of dough. But then again, when you have people who are 100 billionaires or more and they want things, they get things.
Mm-hmm.
So, we know what's going to happen to their commitments. They're going to have them. They're going to have them for sure. The quality is just going to go down. If they lose teams, then it's a real blow. It clearly knocks them down a notch. I mean, that is not good. Does it hurt their franchise value? Probably. What I'd really like to know is what's in the governance documents of the USHL. Like, are there exit fees like you see in college football where somebody goes from one conference to another? Those fees have gone way up. My guess is, and this is purely a guess, there is no exit fee. Who would have frickin' ever seen this happening?
Exactly. And I think that's a great take, Bob. I think you look at does Major League Baseball have an exit fee for the New York Yankees, right? Do they have, why would you ever think that the USFL is going to show up? And if they do, why would Roger Goodell worry about losing the New York Giants to go play against the Memphis Showboats in his mind, right? That's not going to happen. So I think that's 100% could be the possibility, because why would you have to be really untrusting to think of that at a tier 1 level of the USHL.
And I would even say on top of that is to support your opinion or your theory. I think if there were exit fees, you would have heard about them by now, right? Because you're hearing about these teams that are thinking about leaving. You're hearing about players who are leaving and hearing rumors of player transfer fees of different types, different amounts, different language. But you're hearing the rumors as they're happening. And the one thing that I have never heard enter the conversation is a franchise exit fee.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know, like back in the day when 2000, when the USHL was better than the North American League, but it wasn't that much better. They didn't have that many more commitments. And I can tell you the Eastern Junior Hockey League, which morphed into the NCDC and the USPHL, back in those days, when you took a look at the Boston Junior Bruins or the Jersey Hitmen, they had, or where did Sean Tremblay coach? The New Hampshire Monarchs, right?
Originally, before
Yes.
eventually to the Islanders Hockey Club, yes.
Oh, to the Islanders afterwards. That's right. Those teams never lost anybody to the USHL.
Yep.
I mean, today, a kid from that neck of the woods that would have an opportunity to go to the USHL, you're not even thinking about it, right? But back in the day, they never lost players to the USHL, like rarely. And so maybe, Lucas, because when they were kind of equal, they were better, but kind of equal to the North American League and the EJHL, maybe there was something put in there. I don't know. Bet you they wish they had it now.
Oh, certainly. They certainly wish they had it now.
I mean, what do you do? I wanted to move off the USHL, but it's been such a successful league. What do you do if you're the commissioner right now? How do you stop these kids? Next year, forget about the transfer fees. They're gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, listen, again, this is all speculation. Maybe they're not going to lose them. Maybe you're going to have billionaires come in and stroke checks, nil checks. I don't know. Well, if you're not making money now, I doubt that's going to happen. But, take a look at a team that used to be not very good in that league that ended up winning championships in Chicago. Man, you talk about what Brad Robbins put together. Anybody that I heard that was around that organization from a development standpoint and all the bells and whistles, they had it. So maybe somebody will do that. I don't know. But I don't see a lot of people doing that.
I feel like at the risk of oversimplifying it, when you're a league that's under attack, right, as the USHL is, right, we can say that. We've called it a war, we've called it a battle. USHL, their preeminence is under attack right now. And I think this goes for any league that finds itself in this situation. You have two options. You can fight back, coordinated strategies, coordinated messaging. You can either expand your league to new markets, or you can solidify markets that exist with funding, with additional money, with additional support. That's your aggressive stance, right? You say, we draw the line here, this far, no farther, and this is what our league is committed to. Or the other option is you find a way to essentially wave the white flag in a way that works for you. I know when I was talking to Dan about this, I brought up when basketball merged, right? When a lot of these professional leagues merged, they take the best talent from the league they absorb, and the rest of the teams go by the wayside, and everybody gets a little piece of the pie that survives. The teams that don't, they get a little bit of a severance, and that's it. And again, at the risk of oversimplifying it, I think those are your two options. Either go aggressive, be coordinated and counter, or sit back and try to make the best on your way out the door, because there is no third option in my mind. Sitting around and waiting for something to happen, sitting around and running the same playbook you've been running, that definitely doesn't work. That leaves you in the worst case scenario because you're not getting anything out of that. So I feel like you got to pick one or the other.
So they haven't expanded in a long time. And unless they drop their pants and their franchise fee, I mean, who's going to invest now?
Yeah.
I don't know how you fight losing your teams or losing the best players. Like I tried with a couple of people today to put myself into their commissioner's shoes, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe they won't lose anybody. But it's not looking that way right now, and I don't know what you do. I really don't think you. I don't think you wave the white flag. I think what you probably do is you stay with the number of teams that you have right now, and you're going to have 190 commitments. That's not changing. It's the NHL draft choices that are going to change. If they peel a couple of teams away, no problem. They're the furthest away from Nebraska and Iowa. No problem. You cut your costs, okay? And you hunker down. Maybe you expand to one or two other markets to get back to 16, and you move on. I don't think that's I personally think that's probably the only strategy.
I agree.
I can't think of another one. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay. So you tried to fight the bully and you lost.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just go back and you do your own thing.
Yep.
And that's what I think they're going to have to do. Time will tell. BCHL guys, this is the group that I really feel sorry for. So go back. We're going to round up tonight, Lucas. 500 Division I freshmen coming in. The NCAA coaches are saying it's going to be 50% coming from the CHL over time. That leaves you with 250. If the USHL gets 190 of those, Lucas, does that leave us with 60?
It does leave us with 60.
And it's really not 60. It's 60 minus, what did we say there was? 486? I mean, it leaves you with 55.
40,
let's just call it. Yeah, whatever.
44, 46. Here you go.
Yes. Okay. And these are leagues that had last year slightly over 100 and one at 99. Let's just call it 200 commitments for coming from these two leagues. Now, maybe it won't be 50% in the CHL. I'm just going to tell you right now, if there was a line in Vegas, Dan, I would be putting some of my bricks in your bag that we talked about in the last pod,
yeah,
and you could play it for me. So, and I feel sorry for them because they left Hockey Canada. They brought teams from the Alberta Junior Hockey League with them, and they left Hockey Canada so they could get away from the restrictions and get more younger players that could be NHL draft choices and more commitments. And they're killing it this year. And they're going to get killed next year. I mean, the best kids in the Western Hockey League are going to go to the best kids in Western Canada are going to go to the Western Hockey League. And my guess is the best Americans, if they can't play in the Canadian Hockey League, they're going to the USHL. And I don't know. So they're still going to get some Division I commitments, but they're going to be a D3 league. Now, again, maybe that's okay. Maybe their in-game entertainment and the fun that they have and their cost structure is going to be just fine for them, and they'll plod on. But what they were hoping to be when CHL players were not eligible, they were hoping to be the USHL and more. And that's over.
I think the big thing too is when you look at all these leagues, when you look at the USHL, the BCHL, we'll get to the NAL. If a league was slotting in somewhere in the middle of the commitment structure, right? You sort from most to least. If somebody was slotting in the middle and taking a few commitments from underneath, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But you have now a league in the CHL that is going to objectively 99.9% truth slot above everybody. It's not unfair to say that there's really no way to know what your path forward is going to look like. But I think that the one thing that people, both parents, players, and potentially any teams that are listening, is you have to be flexible. The next 5 years, the next 10 years are going to determine whether your organization, whether your league, whether your governing body continues to be successful. And we've defined success, I think, a number of ways. We've defined it as butts and seats, alcohol concession sales, profit year over year, D1 commitments, D3 commitments, whatever you determine to be your success,
Right.
you have to fully commit to that. If you say to yourself, I want an entertaining product, I want D3 commitments, you better commit to a strategy that gets you that. If you say, I want butts and seats and I want to be hyper-focused on ACHA in my region, then you better commit 100% to that strategy.
Yep.
You have to decide what you want and own that decision-making process. If you waffle, if you waver, that's where you get caught in the undertow and you're going to get swept out to sea.
And to your point earlier on one of the other podcasts, control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you decide your plan is, let your fans know.
Yeah.
Let the hockey world know that this is what we're going to do. This is the level that we're going to be at, and we're going to be the best at it. Plain and simple. And then deliver on that promise. North American Hockey League. Yikes.
It's a tough
Yeah.
place to be.
So let's do a little history here. This isn't the first time that the North American Hockey League has seen the Grim Reaper. Back in 2004, I believe, they were a Midwest league, Illinois, Michigan, in that area. And the development team left to go to the USHL in 2005. CompuWare decided to pack it in because Karmanos owned I guess it would have been the Plymouth Whalers at that time. He owned them, I think, when they were in Windsor and there was some transition. And so what were they going to do? And I don't know if Frankenfeld was in charge of the North American Hockey League at that point in time. But they merged with a league called the America West Hockey League. It was basically a premier league out west. It was a different time, and it was a way to survive. So, Lucas, your plan, fight and expand, that's exactly what they did. And it was a different time because CHL players weren't eligible to play in the NCAA, and there were less Canadians because of the Canadian development model. And believe it or not, the West Division of the North American Hockey League that year had 33 Division I commitments. Now, we all lived in another league that expanded out west, and we would have killed for 31 Division I commitments last year. Different time, though. Wasn't going to happen last year. It could happen back then. And then I have never met Mark Frankenfeld, but I've watched him from afar. And when you take a look at what he did, taking over the old pro markets down south, then going into Minnesota, Wisconsin, etc., and then he planted a flag right in our backyard. I can't say anything bad, so I'm going to just leave it there. But you take a look at their Division I commitments in the Null in the Northeast, and then the other, I mean, Frankenfeld's been a winner.
Yep.
I mean, when you can sell franchises at what he's selling them for, God, I bet the USHL wish they would have had that kind of an expansion model. I mean, they wouldn't be in the possible predicament that they're in right now. Frankenfeld's done a hell of a job. He's created a Tier 3 level. But we're talking Division One commitments here, and we're talking NHL attention because they have people that get drafted out of that league. Not a lot, but they do get drafted, and they do get scouted. I'm not saying every team, but there's NHL attention there. That NHL attention is basically going to go away. It may not go away for goalies. Goalies are a different breed. If you take a look at their draft numbers in the National Hockey League from the North American League, goalies are it. And you take a look at some of the goalies in the National Hockey League and where they came from, it was the North American Hockey League. Okay? But, guys, we've done the math. There's 50 Division I scholarships left, and they're going to be fighting between the BCHL and the North American League. And just like the BCHL, they're going to have a couple of, a handful of Division I commitments. So let's call it 25 if you want to go to 50 divided by 2. But they're probably going to be a D3 feeder league. And I would say that for sure the North American Hockey League and the USHL get way older. I don't know what the BCHL is going to do. But the North American League's position right now is severely diminished, and this will test Mark Frankenfeld's all his abilities. And don't be surprised if he comes up with one of your plans, Lucas, and they end up surviving because that guy is a survivor. Now, here's the other things that they have to worry about. You've had over the last number of years teams pay $1 million plus for their franchises, like new franchises from the league. Does that all dry up? Because the hype of the NHL is not going to be there. There's going to be some hype with the Division I people, but it's going to be a fraction of what it was. So the juice is kind of squeezed out right now. And will people, expand in? And so what happens to franchise values now too? Like listen, it's no secret, you've had a bunch of parents buy these teams.
Yeah.
Maybe for their kids. Maybe because they want their kid to get a Division I scholarship somewhere, or all kinds of reasons why rich parents do the things they do. Are rich parents going to come back in and buy these teams now? I don't know. If I had to predict, I would say no. But man, parents surprise me. That's a kind way of putting that, what I really wanted to say, Lucas.
It would be an expensive hobby at that point. I can think of a lot less expensive hobbies to kind of get into. But, I mean, you've said it before, Bob, Dan, you've agreed with it. It's when you've got the money to burn and you want something, it doesn't have to make sense sometimes. And if the null becomes, to use a harsh word, as relegated to a single-digit percentage of D1 commitments and becomes a D3 feeder league, again, maybe it's just committing to that vision. The null has made a ton of investment into their media product. Their media right now is second to none. They continue to hire fantastic people. They continue to up the ante every single year. And I think that will help them, especially as college hockey does expand, I think, potentially at the D1. But overall, we've talked a lot about hockey's expansion, and hockey's a growing sport. So if they're prepared and they're willing to see it through, I don't think that's a bad way to end up after the CHL bomb gets dropped.
If the best they have out there is 50 scholarships, their goal has to get all 50 of those. That's their goal.
Mm-hmm.
Just be the best that you can be, Dad said, right?
Yep.
Really, seriously, just work as hard as you can work and be the best that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to take a hit. And the BCHL is going to take a hit. And the USHL is going to take a quality hit and maybe a team hit. Let's talk about Europe for a little bit because they provide players for Division I as well. I don't see them taking a hit right now. But I do potentially see them taking a hit over time. And what I mean by that is you can see the CHL's plan. They are killing it right now. They are dumping liability. They are getting younger players who are NHL picks or about to be NHL picks. If everything falls into their lap, and basically the entire NHL draft, save for a few kids out of the USHL. I know the USHL wants to throw tomatoes at me right now when I say that, okay? But it's coming, okay? I think what happens is you start seeing more Europeans coming to the CHL. Now, they have restrictions on that, but I'm going to just tell you this right now. The CHL, especially if they expand, they will lift those restrictions in a second. If they can get the top draft choices, say there's, over the first 3 rounds, say there are 25 Europeans, and they got to change their rules to get those kids, they're business. They're coordinated. They're united. They're getting those players. So I don't see it dipping there, but maybe over time, if the CHL is successful in executing, then I see it changing a little bit. Let's have some fun. Let's throw up our little chart that we have here. So you can see where it's at right now for 2024. There's 0 players coming from the CHL.
Yep.
That's going to change. And if you just follow here, we talk about 50%. I think the number is going to be 30% next year. And I think it's going to climb to 50% in year 2. I could be wrong. It might be 40 and 40. It might be 30 and 30. It might be 50 right away. But let's just say that it's 30 for next year. Because there are some commitments that are already made. I know some have been broken. So now you have to look at, where do the rest of the players come from? And if the USHL stays at 38%, they're going to have 185 Division I commitments. They're going to have the most Division I commitments. They're going to take a quality hit, but they're going to go down. And I think the Euros, like I say, I think they're going to stay at 3% and they're going to have their 15. So if you take a look at year 1, the BCHL is going to go from 119 in 2024 down to 73. And the Null is going to go from 99 to 58.
Yeah.
It's the following year that if it gets to 50%, like all the NCAA Division I people say it's going to get to, you can still see the USHL, everything we've just been talking about in the pod, they're still going to have their 185. But boy, the BCHL and the North American League get clobbered. And Europe will stay at their 15. Maybe they lose 1 or 2. I don't know. And then you have all the others. And they're just going to go down. And I've lumped in the development team. We're going to talk about them in a second. But now let's just take, unless you guys want to talk about this a little bit, we can take a look at nationalities.
Let's look at nationalities here. Let's dig in.
So Canadian right now has 30% of the players in Division I. America has 59. European has 11. And I would say, on average, the best American players are heading to Division I hockey. And the best Canadian players are heading to the CHL. There are exceptions, obviously, in both places. Celebrini played in the NCAA last year. But in general, that's what you see right now. And then Europe makes up 11% for 54 players. Here's what I'm guessing, guys. The Canadians are going to go to 39% in year 1, and they're going to go to 44% in year 2. Americans, they're going to fall from 59 to 50 and then to 46. And the Europeans are going to basically stay where they're at as far as nationalities go. Now, big concern for you, like if you talk to anybody who's associated with USA Hockey, what they're worried about is my numbers are off, and it's going to be Canadian 60, US 30, and Europe 10. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to see Americans, if they play in the CHL, I think they're going to come home faster than what the Canadian kids will. Just a guess. Don't know. But this is kind of how I have it mapped out. So, I mean, if you're USA Hockey and I'm right, and there's no expansion, yes, you have a contraction. You go from 286 to 224. What can you do about that, guys?
My question is this. Do you believe that the collegiate game is really that enticing to Canadian players, and that the only thing standing in their way in the past was playing in the CHL? And that, is there a side of it? Is there a devil's advocate side to the argument of the USHL path was always there? If the NCAA route was that enticing, no one was stopping them from taking it, and already filling the NCAA Division I world with Canadian athletes. Do we think that maybe there's an over response here to the fact that the CHL is now opened up? I'm just asking. I mean, that's the devil's advocate side.
Yeah, they're coming. Listen, where they're going right now is U Sport.
Yeah.
They're not going to go to U Sport anymore. They're if you're talking older,
mm-hmm.
By the way, for anybody who's watching this, we're taping 2 pods right now on the same night. So this is a pod that's going to come out on December 19th. We're taping it on December the 9th. And we taped one from 5:30 till 7, and then we started at 9 again. Between 7 and 9, there were 3 more overages that committed from the CHL to Division I hockey. Look at it this way, guys. You've got 60 teams in the CHL. 62 if you add Muskegon and Youngstown. But you have 60 teams, and you have 3 overages. That's 180 players. Not all of them are academically eligible. Maybe I would think over time more will become academic, but let's just say 120 of them are. Okay? And then you've got kids who are 19, about to be overages, and let's just say there's 6 per team. Well, that's another 360. I could tell you they're coming to play Division I hockey. They're not going to U Sport unless they are going to get homesick and they want to go to school down the street. They're coming to Division I. Most people would say that it's going to be 50% Canadian.
Yeah.
I don't know. These are all guesses, and we're going to be able to look back. And of course, the model that Division I, we know what the model is for the CHL. Get all the best 16 and 17-year-olds and keep them until they're 20. The question is, what's going to be the model for the NCAA? And in fairness to the NCAA, because we've kind of crushed them a little bit as far as narrative and stuff like that goes, and really just not messaging properly or at all right now, they may have a whole bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds in their back pocket right now. They may have nil deals done for all the guys that are going to get drafted in the first round right now. But those players can't say to their teams in the CHL, hey, this is it. I'm gone after this year. I'm heading to wherever in Division I hockey. So we won't know that until their teams get eliminated. And the raining that is like it's pouring on Division One hockey right now. They are losing the narrative, as we talked about in our last pod. The narrative could switch, guys. Maybe they're doing the Ali Foreman rope-a-dope right now. They're going to let Foreman punch themselves out and then, boom, knock Foreman out. I don't know. So let's get into the most fascinating, what I think is the most fascinating part of all of this. It's not whether Youngstown and Muskegon are going to leave or anything else. What's going to happen in Ann Arbor? That's the question. It's a big piece of the puzzle. So let's just look at some numbers here. They take 23 players a year who are 15-year-olds trying out, and they come in as 16-year-olds. I think we talked about this earlier on another pod. 15 of them a blind man could find. And then the remaining 8, I mean, you can flip coins basically from the next 25 to 40 players. And I say you can flip coins because it turns out that the kids that they don't take that end up in the USHL end up being first, second, and third round draft choices. So nobody has a crystal ball, and it's not faulting the development program. You just can't, it's really hard to predict 15-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And the NHL makes the same mistakes, okay? Try doing it in the Western Hockey League where you're drafting 14-year-olds and you're trying to project them when they're really going to help your team at 17, 18, and 19. So of those 23 kids that they really want, 1 or 2 every year kind of slips to the CHL. They might not be on an academic path. Who knows? They just go there. I mean, if you want to go back as far as you want to go back, you could talk Patrick Kane. You could talk Mike Modano. I mean, go down the list. They're going to get theirs. The real question for the development program is, what happens if they don't lose 1 or 2? What happens if they lose 3 or 5 next year? And then the year after, lose 5 or 7? And what happens if the 16-year-old team who's now going to turn 17, what happens if 5 of them decide, I'm heading to the CHL? That's where the draft's going to be done out of. That's where I'm going to get the most exposure. That's where my agent tells me is going to be best for my career. And, oh, by the way, I still have my NCAA eligibility. So that is the real intriguing piece of the puzzle that, we just don't know. And I will tell you this, agents, I said it before and I'll say it again, they want their kids playing in the CHL. Not all of them, but that's where they want them. So they're going to be on their side. Now, could Division I hockey swing that around? But we're not talking about Division I hockey here. We're talking about the national team.
Yeah.
Division I hockey can swing it around by just writing checks, right? So, a little bit about what we were talking about earlier. What happens if the USHL isn't as strong a league as what it was before? What then? Here's a little bit of history for you guys. When the development team first started, they didn't play in the USHL. They played exhibition games against colleges and they played exhibition games against OHL teams. The arena that they play in was an OHL arena. So if you're not getting the best players because they're going to the CHL, do you still invest $3 million a year into that program? I don't know. Maybe they do. It's development. Maybe they just develop the next 10 best players. And then tell those 10 players that you have no chance of playing on our World Junior team because we're going to be taking all the CHL kids.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, maybe they don't lose one player. I mean, it's the national team. I mean, they get treated like gold. But don't think for a second in Ann Arbor and Colorado Springs that they're not worried right now. They're worried. You never know when you're going to lose a player to the CHL. And when one player goes, the other 22 on the team are saying, is he doing the right thing? Because you know who usually leaves? It's either your worst player or your best player. And when it's the worst player, nobody cares. And when it's the best player, everybody is saying, maybe I should follow him.
Yep.
So, could they go to the OHL? Well, they ditched the North American League in 2005. Could they ditch the USHL right now? I mean, USA Hockey's Tier 1 league. I don't know. I mean, that's a stretch. But it's got to be talked about in their war room, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because the people in Ann Arbor, I'm going to tell you who they care about. They care about Ann Arbor. That's it. They may tell you they care about the USHL. They care about what's happening in Ann Arbor, plain and simple. Here's another thing for you. I don't think the CHL even takes them. The CHL doesn't want the national team. They want the players who are on the national team.
Yeah.
The OHL has a draft, or the CHL, all of them have a draft. What are you going to do? They're not the USHL. And this is another reason why the USHL is not, and never has been, the third or the fourth major junior league. They compromised to get the development team in. They gave them a split schedule. I mean, there's no way the OHL will do that. They'll figure out a way how to crush them and take all their players. Whether it be the Western Hockey League, who's going to take the players because those kids are out there, or the Quebec League that's going to get them there. But I don't see any way that the CHL takes them. But I think the development team is in serious jeopardy here. I don't see them stroking any checks like nil checks. I mean, that's not coming. I think they're in trouble. And if I had to make a wager, there's going to be a lot of leakage from that program. And then they'll have some tough decisions to make. Am I crazy, guys?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head right now.
I think the problem is it does come back to, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit back and do nothing and just let the CHL run rampant, pillage your players, pillage your programs, take what they want and leave the rest? Or are you going to do something about it?
So we've been harping on a message and a narrative from Division 1. What have you heard from the USHL? By the way, the development program is in the USHL.
Yep.
Hello? You have heard what the enemy wants to do to you. They want to kill you. What is your message?
Yep.
What are you going to do? And I'm hearing crickets. So we're going to post these numbers 3 years from now when we're on episode 159. Okay.
Maybe we'll have made it to Hockey 102 by then.
Hockey 103. No, it'll be 301. 301.
301.
Yeah, 101.
301. It'll be 301. I mean, and we'll find out if I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, when we were talking about nil in the last episode, and it's the Wild West, and nobody knows where this thing is going, it's kind of the same thing here. Nobody really knows where it's going. What happens in the USHL if teams are tired of making money, tired of losing money? do they contract?
Mhm.
I mean, you want to talk about the North American League contracting? Let's talk about that for a second. If nobody's buying franchises, and listen, Mark Frankenfeld's been amazing. Maybe he continues to sell franchises, okay? But you take a look at I don't know what they call it, the Texas division. Oh, have you seen the driving that those teams have to do?
Yep.
What happens if one of them just says, you know what? I'm not spending this money anymore. Your travel may just have gotten a lot worse. I mean, I was in Colorado at a North American Hockey League game last year. There was 400 people in the building.
Yeah.
I mean, go to the East Coast. Okay? In our old stomping grounds. You go to North American League games there, there's nobody in the building.
Nope. It's you if you're there. You're the
Right.
Dan, I think you and I accidentally ended up at a game out there that we went to the wrong rink in the facility.
We did. We did.
Like, how long before people just say, I'm not prepared to lose any more money?
That's a question that's as old as time, Bob. I think that's a question that comes in a lot of this, and I think it comes at all levels of all sport. And I think that's going to be where your answers are going to come from, right? It's going to be, how much money do the ones winning this war right now want to make, and how much are they willing to make, and how many scars will that inflict on those that are not in that winning group right now in the war, and will that make them stand up and fight back, as Lucas said, or will they continue to sit in the sideline and see where all the chips fall? It's going to be interesting to see.
And I think one thing that I want to add to this discussion very briefly is the real problem with not organizing themselves as leagues, as divisions, as groups, is that when a team decides to fold, a lot of times it's done with no warning because everything crumbles very quickly. I'm seeing it literally happen right now. I am certainly not going to name the teams, but I got phone calls today in the 45 minutes between when I got home from work and hopped on this first podcast about 3 different organizations that are 5 players leaving away from folding midseason. That there are enough players who are seeing the writing on the wall and trying to organize leaving as a group, which will essentially commit the team to being folded. Now, obviously, that's not widespread, but as we sometimes say in math and in statistics, 2 points is a line, but 3 points is a trend. And when you start seeing these things over and over and over, you got to wonder, our league's not only setting themselves up for failure by not acting, but are they setting themselves up for failure by not actively coordinating, by actively not supporting each other? Don't put yourself in a position where a team is going to stick it out to the bitter end and then call you for a game in 3 days and go, hey, we're not coming because we don't have a team. It's a reality. It has happened. It will happen.
We've all seen it happen. Gentlemen, Christmas time. I don't want you to buy me any presents this year. Okay?
Back.
But I'd already stocked up on summer sausage in bulk, Bob.
But if you're inclined, Pro V1X, okay? Number
You know
3.
what? Hold on. You don't want these. I got a ton of Wilson Chaoses for you. They're orange.
They're orange.
That's not
They're good for you, Bob. You can see them when you hit them.
That's not color golf balls. No. Anything but Pro V's or Pro V1X's? No.
V1X's. What am I, made of money?
I got Wilson Chaoses. You'll be happy with them. You'll love them.
Oh my God! What a great 6 first podcast before Christmas.
Yep.
We're coming back after Christmas. We got to take a little bit of a break to be with family, right?
That's it. That's what we got to do. And we hope everyone enjoys their families. That's what this is all about. And when you enjoy your families, start planning out what your hockey life looks like.
Guys, Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas. I hope everybody enjoys their holiday season. I hope everyone enjoys their new year. And at least Michigan can't win a football national championship this year. So let's all applaud that.
Oh, that's terrible. Have a good night, guys.
See you guys.